Our full-time staff gets down to about 50, 60, 70 in the winter. We don't do a whole lot of business in the winter, but we do winter business. So that is the scope, and it's a real challenge today to get our employees to understand hospitality is really four basic things: look good, smell good, feel good, and smile. If you can do those four things, you can be very successful in hospitality. The challenge today is to get everybody to do that. That's the challenge today.
Hi, welcome to the Current by Oceans. I'm your host, Keylor, and remember, this is a show built for people who actually run operations in hospitality and the leaders that make it all possible behind the scenes. Today, I'm joined by Alan Bernstein. He's the owner at BB RiverBoats. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, and I'm looking forward to it.
Same here. So, Alan, before we dive in, tell us your story with hospitality. How did the industry pull you in? Was it a deliberate path? What happened, and how did you end up where you're at now?
Well, my family started in 1962 with some restaurant operations. So I was 10 years old in 1962, and it did sort of capture me. I was very interested in the business. It was a very popular restaurant in downtown Cincinnati, and so it sort of I grew up in it, and it just sort of expanded.
That's great. So tell us more about BB Riverboats, what it looks like today, the scale of the operation, what your team looks like at a surface level, what there is to know.
Okay. BB RiverBoats was started in 1979 here in Cincinnati. We had one 400 passenger boat, and we opened on March 15th of 1980, and we have never looked back since. The boat was full, and it was an instant success. Not many small businesses get that kind of response, but there had not been a boat operation in Cincinnati in quite a while. And when we brought it back, it was very popular. So that's how we got started. Today, our fleet is a 1,000 passenger riverboat and a 500 passenger riverboat. We did have a 150 passenger boat, but we sold it last year to a little group up on the Illinois River. So we are down to two vessels, a very large one and not so large or not so small, but a second boat called the River Queen. So that's our current fleet. We employ about 250 employees in the summertime. Our full-time staff gets down to about 50, 60, 70 in the winter. We don't do a whole lot of business in the winter, but we do winter business. So that is the scope, and it's a real challenge today to get our employees to understand hospitality is really four basic things: look good, smell good, feel good, and smile. If you can do those four things, you can be very successful in hospitality. The challenge today is to get everybody to do that. That's the challenge today. So that's my sort of introduction, and I'll be glad to answer any other questions you might want to have.
Yeah, I do have a few. By the way, I think that's a great mindset on looking good, smelling good, smiling. Definitely a very hospitality type of thing. So, yeah, I have several questions. Let me start with this, Alan. So, it's 1,500 passengers, give or take. How many rooms? How do you measure that? I mean, how many? Because this is not a hotel, but it's kind
No,
of
no,
like
no.
it.
This is an excursion boat. This is a boat that you have private parties or private conventions. And our big boat is broken into five different rooms. Although you can have the whole boat and everybody has access to uh, the on the inside, we can actually have five different events going on a same cruise, keeping everybody private. So
Okay.
yeah, that's sort of how it breaks down, and for us, that's a perfect. We're not a big city like Chicago or New York or New Orleans or whatever, so we utilize those different rooms almost every single day. We might have a group on the first deck, a group on the second deck, and a totally different group on the third, and the third is actually broken into three little rooms too. So, but that's the way our big boat works. Our little boat works by deck. So you can have a first deck or second deck, and then other people can have the other deck. So that's sort of we do that because we don't get a lot of 800 passenger opportunities. We have them. Procter and Gamble is here in Cincinnati. General Electric jet engine division, which is a very large area in Cincinnati, or a large company. We have Kroger as their main headquarter here. Great American. So we have people, or we have groups that are large. It's just not enough to keep the boat busy. So
Hmm.
we break it down, and that's the way we do it.
Okay, that's help me picture this because again, it's still a lot of people in a boat in a given time. And then what goes on there? Is there, for example, like a food and beverage operation going on inside there, or multiple, or what else happens inside
Well,
the
we have
facility?
bars on all those decks and all those areas, so you can. Your bar is actually private. If you want food, and we have an extensive food background, so we provide a lot of food. Now, there are exceptions. If you want a specific Asian, we're obviously not Asian. So we'll let them bring in Asian food or whatever their specialty is. And, uh, and that's fine with us because we can't produce it anyway. So you can have music in your space. It's not throughout the whole boat. You can have entertainment of some sort other than music, but it really is almost like a hotel meeting space or area where you have multiple rooms that could be going on, or having several different groups in the same basic area.
So tell me more, help me understand the business model. So this is mostly, is there, for example, is there a service directly to the customer, or is it mostly with businesses and big groups? Is there a minimum that a group needs to book for?
That's a great question, Kaylor. It's what we have during our season, a lunch, sightseeing, and dinner open to the general public every day. So there is public space on our boats, whatever the boat it is. There is an opportunity for a husband and wife, or a boyfriend and girlfriend, to go out on a date and have a nice meal, have a bottle of wine or whatever, along with, maybe on a deck above them might be a GE charter with a bunch of company reps from all of the companies that buy GE engines. And it could be also a Procter and Gamble group on the next level. So it is very similar to a quote hotel operation where you have the public and then you have these private events. They all get on the same boat. um, the only thing that we tell everybody is outside the deck that they're on is common to everybody. So we do not restrict the public from going to the very top deck and enjoying the view. In fact, that's who it really is for. It's not for the private groups, it's more for the public. And yes, you can go on as a single person if you want. We don't get a lot of singles, but we give them that opportunity.
That makes sense. I still have a lot of questions just from that initial introduction that you gave me, but a couple more that I think are very important and might also, the listeners might also be wondering. And one of them has to do with the staff. I mean, obviously, this is very common in hospitality, having summer temporary staff, not unique, I would say, to your line of business. But then the staff that you do retain, the 50 to 60 people that are year long, how are they composed? What are the groups?
That's a great question too, Kaylor. We do our own food, so we have a fairly significant kitchen staff on our wharf, on our dock. It doesn't go out. It's where the boat's moored to, and they come in. We distribute food that way. We distribute crew that way. Every crew member is given a boat and then what they're going to do on that boat. So they might be assigned to the public on a cruise, or they could be assigned to one of the private parties. That's done each week, and that is the beginning of this group of 60 or so. What we refer to our management team, because we have a lot of teams. We have maintenance and repair. We have food. We have liquor. We have beer and wine. We have service people that make sure our service people are dressed and smell good, feel good, look good, have a smile. And so it's a team effort. They meet at least once a week, sometimes twice, to discuss all of this in a meeting. It's our basic operations meeting where we're talking to everybody. Maintenance, boat staff, the boat crew, that's the captain and the mates and the engineers and all that. We also talk to the kitchen. We talk to beverage. We talk to our service people. So they all get in this room at least once a week and they talk about the upcoming events. That's sort of how it's organized. It's the only way we know how to get all of this information delivered to where it has to go.
Okay, that makes sense. And that brings me to more questions. And the other question I had for you had to do with the summer versus winter business. But I definitely want to get to that. I'll come back to that.
Okay,
Let's put it aside because since you've already are already talking about day to day operations, one question that is at top of mind for me here is your day to day, and I imagine it's pretty varied from week to week. But let's give it a shot. Tell me what you're actually doing and what you're actually spending your time doing when you're working day to day, week to week. Just paint us a picture.
sure. Um, as I told you, a week is already discussed. So they have all of the information for the week that they're working in. They come in on that day. We might have 3 cruises. We might have 6. That day, they would have to manage all of that. They know it in advance, so it's not a surprise. We got 6 groups. It's all done in advance. It's all done. Right now, we have obviously computers that do the majority of it. We still use a lot of paper because you've got to disseminate very minute details that the computer would have, but it would be more difficult to find it in the computer than on the piece of paper. So every cruise has a cruise detailed list on paper, and it's very detailed. We need red tablecloths, we need blue napkins. It gets into the minute detail. Some people request different liquors and wines and beers. Just a real quick diversion, we had a Procter and Gamble big cruise many years ago, and they wanted to have a beer from every country that was represented at that time. There were 32 countries in Cincinnati, and we were able to get all 32 uh, kinds of beer from those countries. It was a big deal, but we did it. And I remember the distributor saying, "You're not serious," and I said, "Yeah, I am serious." And but we got it, and so those are the kinds of things that are thrown at you that you would not know in detail, but you get it in that meeting. So when you get here on that particular day, this is what I got to get ready. I got to get all these beers. It's a very, very closed system where they know exactly what they need, exactly how many people are either the main number or the people that they expect. Sometimes we don't get everybody. Sometimes we get more than everybody. So, there's sometimes you have to deviate. Okay, we need 10 more seats in that room. They have to go get 10 more seats and get it set up so that it doesn't look like we're surprised. But everybody has a role. Our food people from the main kitchen where it is all prepared to the people that serve it on board are all together. They know what to get. The chef does a great job in organizing that. So the staff on the boat come into the galley. Into the chef says, "Here is all your stuff. We have checked it off. Why don't you check it off?" And then this goes to the River Queen. This goes to the Bella Cincinnati. This goes to the third deck of the Bella. It's all. It, I would like to say it's a symphony. Sometimes it doesn't go as well as a symphony concert, but we try. We try every day to make it easy.
Well, that is fascinating, Alan. One thing that I like to do in this show sometimes is whenever I hit a point, operationally speaking, that I know the listeners could be going, is that like Why is that? Like, why do they do it like that? I like to pressure test it, and I love to do that for just a second because you mentioned the list on paper, and it's just so interesting to me. And of course, paper still has a place, especially in an industry like hospitality. But I have to wonder, right? You did say that you use a paper list that everybody goes through, and they have like with checks and things like that. So, what is you mentioned the reason for not, let's say, digitalizing that is visibility or ease of access to it? Tell me more.
No, we could use tablets and little, handheld little computers and little things. That the issue is timing, and then unfortunately, we move a lot of things around. So a tablet or something that you have to be responsible for is going to get in the way. So we have learned that paper is the easiest way to get that all of the details down into a funnel that a food person can understand. And it also doesn't get in the way. They can put it on top of their cart or whatever that they're moving with, and it's there. We have computers, obviously. Our boat has computers on it, and uh, but um, it's not as easy in today's hospitality world because you are, in our case, we are moving physical food from the main location to either boat. Sometimes that's a pretty good distance, but not terrible. And it just seems to be more in the way. Now, we wouldn't have to write all that stuff down on paper, but um, I'm an old school guy. You can tell I'm not a teenager. And of course, I grew up before computer era. My grandkids, they laugh at me when I say, well, we used to do it, when one of my grandkids asked me to help him with math. And I said, okay, I'll help you with math. They don't do 2 + 2 = 4 anymore. They're taught a whole different way to do math, and they laugh at my way, which I think is the simplest. But it's funny how things change over the years. Since 1962, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have beepers, we didn't have any of that stuff. It was hard back then, and it's gotten easier with computers. But people might be confused why we still do it the way we do, but it also gives us some security and some real communication that they're getting the information that they need to do their job. And it's seems to work for us. Now, I'm going to guess in 3, 4 years, I might not be here, that it will get more and more animated, more and more IT stuff. And I guess maybe on your watch, you'll be able to get everything that you need to know for your day. Maybe that's the future.
Well, that's very interesting. And actually, a pretty unique angle that you have, Alan. I gotta wonder, do you ever get pressured? Has this happened before, or is it something that happens often that you get pressure from, let's say, the younger leaders, the younger operational leaders, and that tell you, "Hey, we should be doing this in this other way." And is that something that happens?
Yeah. My daughter and son who are with me in this company, they call me old all the time because I cannot grasp as an old person all the young I can't turn my phone or I can't do things on my phone that everybody else in the world can do. I'm just not orientated that way, which is interesting because it might be very interesting if I went back in my career that I could, get all this new stuff. It might be a totally different experience, but that's not going to happen. And I've adapted. My daughter and son are very modern. Oh my God, they can do more on their phone than I can do on a typewriter. So I don't, maybe your listeners don't even know what a typewriter is, but that used to be the way you did things. I think you've got a very interesting question because the older generation is way away from that. The younger generation is way away from what I was used to. And that clash happens quite a bit. It really does. They go, Dad, this is the old fashioned way, and we need to do it this way. It's quicker, it's easier, it's all the things that you're talking about, they're into. And believe me, when I finally retire, which may be soon, may not be, I'm sure that they're going to change things to the new way.
Hmm. Yeah,
That'll
that
be just a transition, a normal transition.
absolutely. Do you have any examples of recent conversations, recent changes that have happened?
Well, Yeah, we do several times a year. We take one of our boats and we travel to other cities, other states, and they start that organization early on. Who's going to be the captain? What boat are we going to take out? Who's going to be the crew? How are we going to get food from here to there? How do we do this? And that is all done in a computer. When I get into a meeting like that and they want my approval, I go, where are the sheets? How do we know? Well, we don't have sheets. And how do you want me to do this without a sheet? And they said, well, if you look on the computer, you'll find everything that you need. And indeed you do. When you go there, it's there. But it's, it, we clash quite a bit on, items that sometimes are service issues. Why do we have this person on this cruise when we know that Procter and Gamble needs this kind of service or that kind of service? We don't try to clash a lot because you don't want your employees to see that the top level management are confused, they're not organized, whatever it might be. But we try very hard to make it seamless. We have been successful for 50 some years. And some of that is, AI does a lot of things today. I am not familiar with AI. I don't, I said, I'd like to be introduced to this guy called AI. And they go, well, it's not a person. They definitely laugh at me, and I'm used to it. But we have had several things that AI has done that has been excellent. I mean, really, and then some of the things that when I read what the AI said, I go, oh, no, that's not right. But anyway, I guess that's the best way to explain clashes or disagreements. They happen more on the accounting side, on the questions of our financial statement and things like that. The clashes are more on that end than they are on the operations. Why did we spend this? Why did we buy a new it? What are these things that we had to get? And it's complex because we're governed by the United States Coast Guard, and they require certain things. If you're in a budget and you have a Coast Guard problem and they say buy this part, you have to buy the part. It may be $5,000. It might be $10,000. So there's things that we disagree with on the financial statement a lot more than we do on the operations end.
It would be fascinating to have them here on the podcast as well and get their side
Well,
and their
maybe one
perspective
day
as well.
we'll do that with you. You can, it would be different because they're going to go, no, no, no. Dad isn't telling you the right way. And they do that a lot to me.
Well, I think all of those perspectives are very valuable. But to pivot away from the technology side of things for a second and coming back to this, just to make sure I don't forget the summer versus winter business. So obviously, and again, hospitality is a seasonal business pretty much across the board, I think, with varying degrees of success depending on where exactly you're located and all of those things. But for you, what does winter business look like then?
Our winter business, other than Valentine's Day is a public cruise, and public make reservations to do that. We have very few charters or private things on Valentine's Day unless somebody wants to do that with a big group. But Valentine's Day is our really only public cruise in the middle of the winter. Sometimes it's snowing outside, sometimes there's ice, and sometimes it's very nice. Sometimes we have 40, 50-degree weather on Valentine's Days. It's not always people go out on Valentine's Day because it's Valentine's Day. Otherwise, the winter business is mainly charters. It's mainly our companies in Cincinnati that are having groups in. Procter and Gamble is one of those that bring a lot of people into Cincinnati, and we're one of their favorite ways of entertaining those visitors. Um, uh, as I said, Kroger and General Electric, and we do a lot of, not a lot, I'm sorry. Let me put it to you this way. We do 90% of our business from March 15th to December 31st. So you can see the difference. And we keep full-time staff at the management level because that's a much harder group to find each year. If you have to find managers every year, not sure I know how to do that. But, servers and, of course, kids in college, high school kids that want a job to make some money. They're our main targets in the summer. We have to deal with the return to school sometimes, and we're busy, and kids are saying, "Well, I got to go back to this college or that college," and it's okay. We somehow or another we get by, get through it. But that's sort of the disparity, the wintertime versus summertime, and that's been consistent since we've started.
Have you figured out any ways to potentially foster a little bit more business during the winter so that, obviously it's expected that it'll dip, but mitigate a little bit the impact of the low season?
We try very hard to get any kind. We discount in the winter. We offer incentives. If you do something in the winter, we'll let you take priority for the summer. But there's a lot of ways to do that. Again, unbeknownst to me, most of our stuff is social media driven. We get a lot of reviews on social media. We rely on social media to get our message out. We have a couple of young, I say young, I guess I'm not supposed to say young, people that know how to do that. If you asked Alan Bernstein to do that, we would have no social media presence. We try very hard to get business in the winter.
Hmm.
It's just hard. When it's 10 below zero outside, of course, I think you're in the southern hemisphere, so I don't know that you get cold weather down there, but in Cincinnati, we can get very cold, or we can have mild winters too. So it just depends.
Hmm. Totally. That is very interesting because the seasonal aspect of hospitality is always a pain for anybody that's in the industry. I mean, who wouldn't wish that they have consistent business all throughout the year? But then that brings me to another question then, which is, I guess you also then have to maximize your revenue during the peak season. And so I know that from the hospitality industry, and I don't know if this is a case for a unique space like yours, but many hotels and restaurants, and they leave a lot of ancillary revenue kind of on the table and don't capture it because they don't know how to market it, or they don't know what to do with underperforming things. So do you have some of that where it's like people have packages but you're also trying to maximize their spend on certain things? Is that something that you see, or is it mostly all predictable revenue that you have in
Well,
advance?
we have been able to predict over the 50 some years that our winter is a downtime. But Taylor, sometimes the winter slowdown is a great time for us to get ready for the next year. Our boats work very hard in the summer, and they get abused quite a bit. So we have every year almost sometimes the same item: restrooms and the cabin space and the bars. And I can't even tell you the whole needs to be repaired or worked on or whatever, remodeled. We only have really 2.5 months at the end of the year. The end of the New Year's Eve, we have quite a nice party. But from New Year's Day to May 15th, or I'm sorry, March 15th is not a significant amount of time with the repairs that we have to do every year. It's a struggle for us to get through that. If we had more cruises in the winter, I don't know that we could do everything that we need to do in order to get our boats back into it. We need some downtime. Yeah, what that is, I would guess that we would probably just have to hire more people in the winter to get all this stuff done. We work at night sometimes. Sometimes it's 24 hours a day. I don't particularly like to do that, but sometimes that's necessary.
That's pretty standard across. I've heard that
Yeah.
before from
Yeah, and I
hospitality
don't know
people.
if hotels take their downtime for that purpose or not, but some should. I can tell you that.
So, since we're in the operations piece, I have a bunch of questions that are also interesting and are also very particular to your industry. So, one of them is occupancy, because hotels obviously deal with occupancy, but guests coming in and out at any given time. Even they could have walk-ins. But if your boat is out in the middle of the ocean, you can't have walk-ins. So I'm wondering about what healthy occupancy looks like for you. I mean, let's say during peak season, what is a percentage of occupancy where you're very happy with that and would like to keep it stable?
Okay, we do not use occupancy because we're different. We're a little different. What we do is we say we have two boats and they can both do 3 to 4 cruises a day. And that's how we measure our success in what a hotel would call occupancy. So if we have 6 or 8 slots a day, how many slots are filled with passengers and how many aren't? We hope in the summertime there's not a lot of empty slots, but they happen. People, there's cancellations, there's weather. We live in an area where thunderstorms are sometimes very severe. Sometimes it's not our fault. Where in a hotel business, their occupancy doesn't consider weather. It's a little bit different. We judge our base of business by the times that our boats go out on the water. Now, if they have people on them, that means we're driving revenue. It doesn't mean that they're full. I told you the Bella Cincinnati is 1,000 passenger boat. We have had 1,000 passengers on over the years, but I think I can count them on two hands. When we've actually had 900 or 950 people on our boat at one time. Most of ours is, again, in hospitality. You need to make sure your customers are happy. So you don't want to put a table for two next to a table for two that there's no space in between. You want to be able to have some separation so that the two people that are at that table are not interfering with the other two that they don't know. So when we sell out, we are not necessarily full of 1,000 people. What our sellout is, we have 650 dining seats. When 650 dining seats are sold, that's a sellout. We do take on what you call walk-ups. We do have walk-ups, the people that come and say, I want to get on the cruise tonight, and they pay their money and they get on. Certainly if we have space. If we don't, they can go on as a non-food revenue person. So we derive revenue from a passenger who is not seated for dinner on a dinner cruise or a lunch cruise. That's very common in our business. So we're very different than hotels. Excursion boats operate on times. Hotels open 24 hours a day. It doesn't matter. They have people all night long. We don't. When we go home and the place is locked up, the place is locked up. So that's the difference. Our sellout is basically comfort level for the people that are booked on that cruise. That's when we sell out. So it's a little different.
Hmm.
But we know that there's demand. Cincinnati is a city that gets a lot of visitors or a lot of people that are going to a Reds baseball game, a Cincinnati Reds baseball game, or a Bengals football game, or they're in town the father or the mother has a meeting at Procter and Gamble, and the family goes on a sightseeing cruise because they want to see the city from the river. Our city is much nicer from the river than anywhere else. So it's a popular thing for people to do. A lot of meetings publicize us as a thing to do while you're not meeting or not in scheduled events. So again, we're pretty well entrenched.
Well, that is also fascinating to me. But I mean, at risk of this question sounding a little ignorant, Alan, but just because I'm trying to wrap my head around this model. To you, you said performance, then it's how many cruises, not necessarily occupancy. But and that you explained the sellouts, but I'm still trying to understand this. So for example, do you only do, for example, let's say on a single day, you would only do 2 sellouts, for example, as opposed to 4, or could you have 4 that are not fully sold out? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Okay, yeah. And let me explain that this way. Um, you could have a group of 150 people. Just you would be able to get a boat on your own if you paid for 175 and the boat is yours. Now the boat holds 260 for dinner. So we get people that charter our boat at a lower amount, but pay a minimum to get a boat for themselves. And they're not near that sellout number, but we sell it out for them because they're a private cruise. On our big boat, the numbers get fairly large. You can have 325 seated on our main deck, a very nice deck. The other rooms are smaller, 150, 100. We have a room for 55. We have a small room for 30. Those numbers, if you want 30, the room for 30 people, you might only have 15, but you're willing to spend the minimum to get to the 30 and get all by yourself. So you have that choice in your company's situation. So I want to be by myself. I don't want to be with others. Then you would have to do the minimum number to take that deck or that room, and that's how we divide it all up. It sounds a little difficult, but it's almost like a minimum at a hotel when you do a meeting. They say, how many are you going to have? 150. They say, okay, if you do 150, you have to hit your number of 150 or you pay for 150 anyway. And that's sort of our model where you can have it for 50 people if that's really what we've had in the past. I did it myself. I had a gentleman and a lady. He wanted to be by himself on a small boat. He rented the entire boat for just him and his girlfriend. He wanted a nice dinner. We produced all that, and he was extremely happy. But that's the most extreme I can tell you as an example. It was a little weird that he would do that, but that's what he wanted. And if he can afford to do that, or if somebody says, "Okay, I'll give you the money," why would you turn that down? So
Mhm.
it's sort of hard. We are not a normal operation. Anybody who would look at our operation would say, "How do they do that?" And all I can tell you is we've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, in a way, so you're giving up potential revenue from the top line to secure that revenue because you need to keep the boats occupied.
That is exactly right, and that's why we take in the wintertime, it might cost you, a minimum of 100 people in the summer. We'll drop that to 50 people in the winter just to get 50 people. So that's sort of your difference between summertime and wintertime. There's a lot more flexibility in the wintertime than there is in the summertime. And remember, in the summertime, we do lunch, sightseeing, and dinner every day for the public. So our public is an important part of our bottom line. We are not quite 50% public and 50% private, but we're close. It's a pretty close number. It might be 47, 50, it really will vary. It we're close to 50-50.
Got it. One other question that I think is also, I get all sorts of answers, and especially here, I'm very curious. It has to do with how far in advance, on average, right? How far in advance do you know of reservations? How many days, how many weeks do people typically book the cruises?
Great question. Great question. We post our schedule online, so you can go online, and if you want December 24th cruise, you can go on there and book December 24th right now. If you got on your computer, and we do a very nice Christmas Eve cruise, we have Santa on board. Yeah, it's a great Christmas Eve cruise, and people like that. And I can only tell you that the early bird gets the worm. So if you call on the night before Christmas Eve, we may not have space for you. And so we encourage people, when you have a date, you know what you're doing, even on a charter. Charters sometimes have to adjust their schedule based on ours if they want to do a boat cruise, because maybe we're sold out on June 21st and we don't have anything available. The guy that calls today for June 21st is told we're sold out. And that happens obviously a lot more in the summer than it does in the winter, but that's the way we do it. So first come, first serve. And when you, I mean, we get people that call us all hours of the night. Our our phone system, I'm amazed sometimes at the amount of calls we get at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, our time. But again, in the worldwide perspective of a computer, they could be in Australia making a reservation for our cruise. And we do have a fair amount of international. We have a very good business of internationals. Sometimes we get requests for an interpreter or whatever. We try to accommodate that so that there's no communication gap between the person in charge of the meeting or the event and our staff that doesn't speak Japanese, as an example. So that happens here too.
Well, there is 100 questions that I want to ask you, Alan, but I also want to use a few minutes to get your perspectives on for the future. And you've already said a couple of times that you're looking to retire and potentially delegate the business.
Mhm.
But given all of these years of experience that you have, tell me first. Let's start with something from your reality today. If you could change one thing now or solve a problem from the operations perspective of the business at BB Riverboats, maybe something that's been on the bucket list, something that's you sometimes go to bed and are thinking about it. Is there something that comes to mind?
Well, a lot of things come to mind, but the future, Keylor, I think is going restaurants, nice restaurants are going to probably have robotic servers or, I mean, not the future tomorrow, but it's coming. McDonald's is already experimenting with you go to the order and it's not a person, you plug in what you want and then it comes up over here automatically. So in our case, until they invent people that can replace a actual person. And just remember hospitality in my view is giving a customer an experience that they would not be able to get in other competitive areas. So if they would compare our boat to the boat in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If our boat does the smiling, the look good, the feel good, and the smell good, and the Pittsburgh boat doesn't, that might be the thing that sets us apart. Or it could be that they have Pittsburgh type food on their cruises and we don't. There's some variables there, but I think the hospitality part is the most important. If we don't have a captain that greets you that's nice and where are you coming from and you're going to have a good time and we're going to cover this, and to me that communication system has to be good. If you get a captain that just says go on board, that's not nice. That's not the way to treat a visitor. You say, "Hello, how are you doing?" That's the way to be social. And of course, social today is not like it was. Kids today go on dates on their telephone, or they meet a girl and they let's go out on a date. How do you know who, what? How, I mean, when I was young, you had to learn rejection, you had to learn success, you had to learn what do you do on a date, what makes you better than Joe Schmo who wants to take that girl on a date. That's the way it was. Today, it's not that way. Some of the dates, I'm sure, are not compatible because once you get into the social, when you meet, it may not be the person that you thought it was on the telephone. So there are good exceptions to the rule. But hospitality is making people feel good,
Yeah,
making people feel wanted, uh, not turning them away. And I think the future is sort of bright because I assume they'll be able to tell the robot smile and be nice. I don't know, maybe. I think the future is bright for hospitality. It's a needed, necessary social thing.
I agree. I love that note. And on that note, Alan, I would like to wrap up, but I really, really enjoyed the conversation. It's clear you have a ton of experience. I really, really liked also how we approach this from the angle of a business that's unique in hospitality because it's not a restaurant, it's not a hotel. It has many elements that go into those particular spaces within hospitality, but it is none of those. It's those, and in many occasions, much more than that, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So, Alan, where can our listeners follow you and BB Riverboats and what you're doing, and just continue to keep up with you guys?
Well, we are bbRiverBoats.com on the computer. We have a very nice website. There's a lot to see on there. There's some history, menus. There's all kinds of things on there that I think your listeners may enjoy if they ever come to Cincinnati. If you ask the hotels or people on the street, what do I do to have a great time for a couple of hours? More than likely we get BB RiverBoats. We have a great perspective of our city from the water. We were discovered by the Ohio River. That's how our ancestors found Cincinnati. It's a beautiful area, a lot of hills, a lot of not mountains, hills. It's a beautiful area of northern Kentucky. And if your listeners don't know, the Ohio River starts in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, goes all the way to the Mississippi River, almost 1,000 miles. And each of the little cities along the way, there's some big cities, but even the little tiny towns are really unique to see from the river. It's a different perspective.
Amazing. Well, you heard Alan. Make sure to check out BB Riverboats next time you're in Cincinnati. And for now, thank you so much, Alan, and thank you all for listening to Deep Current. If you are an operator in hospitality and anything from what we discussed with Alan here today resonated with you, feel free to reach out. We'd love to
Yeah,
keep
my
that
email
conversation
is abernstein@BB RiverBoats, and I'll be happy to answer questions if I didn't give you the answer. Um, and now you can't wait too long. I mean, after a few years, I may not be here, but I think so. I don't intend to retire. Retire. I intend to probably slow down, but not retire. Retire.
Thank you so much, Alan.
You're.
So, once again, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
Thank you.